Hello and welcome to episode 256 of the Paint All the Minis podcast. We put the show together so you have got something to listen to whilst you are sitting at your hobby desk and painting your miniatures of any scale, genre or game. Our aim is to have a relaxed and genuine conversation with someone who's as involved in the hobby as you are, from any level, from top to bottom, because we've all got our own unique and individual stories. So sit at your hobby desk, paint your models, listen to the chat. We really do hope that you enjoy the content. Just before I talk about this week's show, please take some time, if you have got a friend or someone that you know, an acquaintance that you think might like the show, pass it on to them, recommend it to them, because there's a whole bunch of people that might be able to spend more time at the hobby desk if they've got something to do. So I know people listen to audiobooks, people listen to other podcasts, people watch movies sometimes in the background, but please feel free to share the show with somebody, because, you know, with 256 episodes now, there's a lot of content there. And if you are a new adopter to Paint All the Minis, go back and listen to some of those previous shows, even from the very early single digits. You know, there's lots of interesting people that have come on the show, whether it's a big name that you know from a rule set or a YouTube channel, whatever it is. There's a whole wide variety of different people that are on there. And yeah, it'd be great to kind of, you know, just unpack that in this day and age where you have to subscribe to this and Patreon that and all that kind of stuff, which all those things is totally fine. This is not that, so it's free. Fill your boots. Fill your boots with it. Go crazy. But anyway, yeah, so please pass it on to other people if you see fit. And if you want to do anything else, you want to subscribe to the YouTube, if you want to give us a review or some sort of star affair on whatever you're listening to, Spotify or Apple, whatever it is, that'd be great too. But anyway, this week I talked to Chris from Offbeat Builds, which is a YouTube channel. Chris creates videos of himself kit bashing Warhammer 40k models, and his videos are really slick, and he's also a chipper and funny chap. So his work is always really good value, in my opinion. Chris came across as a really nice guy, and I was very fortunate to be able to spend an hour with him. I personally had a good few chuckles when I was listening back during the edit, so hopefully you guys enjoy listening too. Thanks to Chris for coming on to the show. I hope that we find common cause to be able to chat again in the future. And if you are into kit bashing or want to be, or have got no idea what kit bashing is, then you can go and check out the Offbeat Builds YouTube channel and you can go and get amongst it. If you want to email me and speak to me for any reason, you got some ideas for a guest, you want to be a guest, or you just generally want to send me some flagrant abuse, then you can email paintalltheminis@gmail.com. If you want to come and hang out with fellow Paint All the Minis people, which have the same sort of chilled, laid-back vibe, you can join the Discord. There's a link in the podcast description, and you can also join our Facebook group. You can follow on Blue Sky, whatever it is. It's all about sharing with us and interacting with us. It doesn't matter whether your paint standard is high, low, indifferent. It doesn't matter if you paint at all. If you do want to just come and hang out with us, that's fine. I had a really good chat on Discord this morning about food. Mr. Schmidt, Smitty, he was sharing his beer battered onion rings, and what else is going on? We're talking about venison steaks and Wagyu steaks. So it doesn't really matter if, like, you know, if you're not really in your painting season right now. If you just want to hang out with some fellow people that are like-minded and fairly chill and, you know, just interested in their own ways, then come and hang out with us. That'd be awesome. But anyway, I think that's enough of the pre-ramble. Let's go.
Paint all the minis. Paint all the minis that you can. And when you paint your minis, listen to that podcast with Dan Adams, that is.
What's happening? We have sort of a problem here. Yeah, you apparently didn't put primer on your latest batch of models you bought. Yeah. See, we're putting primer on all the models now before we paint them. Did you see the memo about this? Yeah, if you could just go ahead and make sure you do that from now on, that would be great. And I'll go ahead and make sure you get another copy of that memo. Okay? Yeah.
So hey, I am here with Chris from Offbeat Builds. How's it going, Chris?
Very, very good. It's very hot in here. The UK is having one of those rare heat waves, and yeah, it's already over 30, so it's going to be fun.
So you're just sitting there in your underpants and like a wet flannel on your head? Like, what's the hot weather kind of...
We haven't quite got there yet, thankfully, but, you know, the afternoon is young.
Do you have a fan? You obviously don't have air conditioning. What do you do to cool yourself down in a loft space? Because that's something that a lot of people have, that hobby space in a loft, right?
Yeah, it's not actually a loft, it's an upstairs bedroom, but it is a what do they call it? A chalet style roof. So It's got all the downsides of being a loft without being shut off from the world, I guess. So yeah, 2 fans currently going. So apologies if you can hear them, but there's not a lot I'm going to be able to do about that.
That's fine, mate. We'll make a special dispensation for it this time. How do you find painting with fans going? Because I often have to have air conditioning on, and depending on which direction the air is blowing, I tend to, the paint on my palette kind of dries out quick. Have you got like a system to kind of block the air while still getting the benefit of the fan?
Well, it's it's a bit of a nightmare. It's difficult to escape it to some extent, even when it's a bit more humid, which it tends to be during British summertime. But realistically, the biggest problem I end up with is liquid cement, so glues and stuff. They evaporate so quickly in this kind of temperature. You got to be really quick on your feet.
Nice. Right, so I asked you, I warned you in pre-show that I was going to ask you a potentially dangerous question. So, Chris, we don't know you at this point, so we'll play a little game. We'll play 2 truths and 1 lie. So, can you tell me 2 things about yourself that are true, 1 that's a lie, but keep the answers secret, and I'll see if I can guess the lie out of the truths.
Okay, so I think I've got some good ones here because none of them sound at all possible. Okay, first one. I am the co-author of a book about tax. Second one. I was once offered the opportunity to drive a Formula 1 car. And the third one is, this is actually my 5th YouTube channel.
Ooh. Okay, so co-author of a tax book, offered the opportunity to drive an F1 car, or this is your 5th YouTube channel. I think the lie is that this is your 5th YouTube channel. I think that's the lie.
That's remarkably good. Is it because I picked something that almost sounded plausible, whereas the other 2 were completely off the wall? Both completely true, by the way.
Nice.
As a good way to introduce myself, I suppose. My name's Chris. I have been doing Warhammer kit bashes on YouTube for a couple of years now, about 18 months, I think. Prior to that, I was a sim racing YouTuber and built quite a large channel. And during that time, I got offered a lot of opportunities to drive some very fast cars, including a Formula 1 car, which I didn't get to do in the end. Did get to be taken out in rally cars on rally stages and do some real world racing and all sorts of stuff with that, which was amazing. The tax book I won't tell you the story about because it's boring. I had a job and I got offered a chance to co-write a book, and I did, and that was the end of it.
Nice. That's good, man. That's really cool because that's proper extremes, isn't it? It's like F1 car, tax book. It's polar opposites, right?
Yes, I contain multitudes.
That's really cool. Thanks for that, man. Thanks for playing that game. I always like to take a couple of risks at times, and some of them pay off and some of them don't. Well, thanks for playing along. We really appreciate it. So, talk to us more about Offbeat Builds before we kind of talk about your history and how you got there. So what is Offbeat Builds? What is your aim? What is your objective? And what sort of content can we see if we check out that YouTube channel?
So Offbeat Builds started, well, the name came because YouTube requires you to put in a name, and I came up with something on the spot. I'm not too unhappy with it, but we're there. But I think it does sum up the ethos of what I try to do. I've never been the sort of person, and God, I apologize, this already sounds cringy in my head coming before I've even said it, but I'm not the sort of person that likes to take direction. I don't like to sort of color between the lines too much. So my involvement with the wargaming hobby has always been trying to do my own stuff within it. And as a kit bashing channel on YouTube, that generally means trying to come up with some way of producing the miniatures or converting the miniatures in a way that Games Workshop didn't really intend. It's mostly a 40k channel. In fact, it's entirely a 40k channel at the moment. That doesn't mean my only interests are 40k, but it's best with YouTube to stick to a niche, at least to start with. Who knows what I'll surprise people with in the future. Sylvanian families conversions, they're in the news at the moment. Let's do some of that. Anyway, so yes, I do kitbash videos. Simple as that. Sort of like Pete the Wargamer, but if Pete the Wargamer had rampant ADHD. I think that's how I describe it.
That's really cool, man. We'll kind of talk more about like why kit bashing is awesome a little bit later. And just like, dude, I was watching quite a few of the videos over the last kind of 14 days, and just now, especially with certain prices of certain companies, I'm just like, that model must cost about £70. So
yeah, don't watch that one.
Awesome. So, but you didn't just wake up on Monday and decide to have a YouTube channel specifically about 40k kit bashing, and a lot of those skills that you've got on show that you use quite matter of factly. One thing I was really just blown away is that you got this huge amount of skill of drilling and bits selection and just knowledge of kits. You don't just get that overnight. That's a long time of building all of that stuff up, right? And just even building up the bit box and building up the experience of certain parts that work with certain others and all that kind of stuff. That doesn't just happen straight away. So when did you first start getting involved in the hobby, and what was it that you first started picking up?
Well, I used to be taken to visit my cousins in a house in South Wales every summer. And my older cousin Steve, shout out Steve if you ever end up hearing this, had these miniatures on a little glass display case on the wall. And I can remember exactly what they were. They were the second edition Elder Aspect Warriors, the Jez Goodwin ones. Absolutely beautiful. And he'd painted them beautifully. And the first time I saw them, I thought, what is this? This is incredible. And it turns out it's a game. And Steve, bless his heart, he's 5 or 6 years older, I think, and took me under his wing, taught me to play the game and stuff. Probably thought it would keep me quiet, quite the opposite. And it sort of went from there. But the love of conversions, and specifically, I mean, I can trace that back to Steve as well. I went back the following year, and when we sort of doing some hobby time together, I was painting some orcs or something, and he was converting this Chaos Lord based on an image in the second edition 40k Chaos Codex of this Cornate Terminator guy. And I just remember fascinated, just paying rapt attention to him producing this miniature from a really diverse, scrappy pile of bits. I mean, it certainly wasn't the bits availability was zero. Then you had what you had, and you had to scratch build everything else. And I watched him produce this thing, and I just think from that moment onwards, a light bulb went off in my head, and I thought, well, I can just build things however I want. And I guess it's always been that way since. That would have been the late 1990s. So I've been accidentally drilling into my fingers and cutting bits of myself off in the aid of producing what I hope are interesting miniatures ever since.
That's cool, man. So, like, you mentioned going on summer holidays and you got taught to play. So did he then take that back home, and were you doing it back home, or was it always just like a summer thing that you would do with cousins?
Oh, no, straight away. We'd go during the summer holiday. My birthday's in the summer, so it was probably only a couple of weeks lag between being introduced to Warhammer 40k and then dragging my father into the local bookshop in town, which I'd seen this stuff in before, but had never been sort of drawn towards. And picking up that second edition starter set and probably hacking my way through the rules, introducing a few friends, building a little bit of a circle, finding a couple of other people in school that played the game, and we all did what I would assume is a rough approximation of what Warhammer 40k was supposed to be. Yeah,
but I mean that's good though. I spoke to someone recently about that, and it's like, it doesn't really matter as long as you're having a good time. It doesn't matter whether you're specific. Obviously, in a tournament, obviously you can't just make silly noises and say, "Oh my god, just shot your gun." You have to play to the rules. But if you're having fun and it's like a mutually agreeable situation, then it doesn't really matter whether you're playing it right. Correct?
Oh no, absolutely. Most of my kit bashes, conversions, scratch builds, etc., contravene the sort of rules as written to some extent. And notably, I have a complete disregard for putting things on the right size bases because I think it doesn't matter. I mean, yeah, in a tournament where screening troops is like a really big part of the strategy, yeah, sure. And maybe if you want to play competitively with your gaming group, that's fine as well. But for most people, if you want to put a model on a bigger base because it looks awesome, just do it.
Yeah.
And if anyone complains, then you don't want to play with them.
That's cool, man. It's a really great mentality. And so, did it stick and stay? How deep did you go into it? Were you really deep into the painting? Were you really interested in campaign gaming? You know, what part of the hobby were you most interested in as you kind of played with friends and as the summers progressed?
Well, I think it's taken me until, the last maybe 4 or 5 years to realize that I'm actually not that fussed about playing the game. Mm-hmm. It was always a means to an end, really, to give me an excuse to build more miniatures. I've been what you'd call a maker, I guess, for my entire life. I've always been trying to build things, whether it's I got into making replica props from movies for a while, and recently I've been building a load of stuff for my son's train set, and that scratches a bit of an itch there. And so if I can build it, I will. Radio control models, all sorts of things. Right. So what Warhammer gave me specifically was kind of a loose structure that I could push up against. So it gives me an idea of here's some basic factions, here's sort of the outline of the lore, and if I want to throw all of that away and do my own thing, I can. But it gives you some sort of boundaries to push against, which I think is always good for creativity.
Yeah, I think when you mentioned it there with your cousin Steve, where it was like he's making this Chaos Terminator guy, it probably doesn't exist, or if it does, you might not have the pocket money to get it. So you can kind of just do it. And I think there's a certain thing about that's really awesome. I love kit bashing and all that kind of stuff because it's like this is my guy, and what's his bolter made out of it? Oh, that's from this part. Like knowing the story of the build is something that's quite interesting to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I tend to just run from one build to another, so the sort of the story of it, I guess, kind of fades away. It's very much about the journey for me. I'm not that fussed about having the models afterwards.
Yeah, I get that.
It's very much the process of creating is the fun bit. And that sort of links around to why I started the YouTube channel specifically, which was a question you asked probably about 10 minutes ago. So let's actually answer that now. The reason I started a Warhammer 40k YouTube channel is, as I think I mentioned at the top of the podcast, I had previously sort of been on YouTube full time as a sim racing creator. I got out of that because the space became quite stale. I had some bad experiences with some partnerships with some companies I was working with, and decided, no, this isn't for me anymore. The itch started to come back, and one thing I learned, one of the many things I learned from doing YouTube full time, but I think the most important lesson for me was what I enjoy is the process of creation. So one of the big problems with the sim racing channel was that I wasn't that fussed about doing the racing bit, but the editing and the creating sort of cinematic elements and all the posh filming stuff, that was really fun. Making something from nothing, that was the fun bit. Actually having to drive the cars around was sort of secondary to it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I was realistically, I was putting sort of way too much time into part of it that wasn't providing a lot of success within it. If you were taking a sort of very business-minded approach to it, which I wasn't. Coming back to, thinking about starting up a new channel, it was really obvious to me I had to do something with making. And yeah, I've never stopped kit bashing 40k stuff. And it's really specifically 40k for the most part, just because it does have that wide universe and the deep lore, so many factions, and all of this source material. Now that Games Workshop's produced pretty much every faction you could imagine and every kit for all of it. You might see that as a bit of a downside. You might think, well, there's nothing left to kit bash, but I see it as an opportunity. Like, I don't have to now go and look at the codex and say, well, I need to kit bash this unit for this army because there isn't an official model. I now look at it and say, well, what do I want to make? Which is it's quite freeing. I still didn't answer the question about starting the channel, did I? But I think I got close.
I think the general gist was you took a coin, it was a flip of a coin, heads it's kit bashing 40k models, tails it's, you know, getting your tax records in order. I think that's basically what I'm
That's the one.
That's cool. So you mentioned that the creation of things is interesting. So, like, you know, you're interested in editing and shots and all that kind of stuff. You know, that's cool. That's really interesting because it's interesting just to hear what different people gravitate towards. And some people are just really focused on certain aspects, but you know, that craft of the framing of the camera, of the microphone, that's something that really interests you. So talk to us a little bit about that. If there's someone that's listening that's maybe does content, if there's someone that's listening to that's maybe think about starting their own, have you got any like kind of tips and hints about how people might get started with this idea of creation and editing and basic equipment that you might need?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a very big question. And the answer is a lot of it depends type things. But what the thing I will say is there are so many aspects to creating any kind of content on the internet. But I think video is one of the more challenging avenues because you have, as you say, sound, light, the actual video, you've got potentially scripting, you've got to appear on camera, you've got to either be good at presenting or find a different way to deliver content. Maybe you need to learn animation for doing some of that. There are so many skills that you've got to develop that it's impossible to be great at it day one. But it's probably impossible to be great at it at day 3000. But, you know, hopefully there is some progression between those 2 points. And that's the attitude I took starting out when I started out the sim racing channel was that just, okay, I'm going to make a video. It's a bit scary, but I'm just going to make one and I'm going to learn everything I need just to get something recorded on my computer and recording a voiceover. And I got that. And then for the next video, I was like, okay, well, maybe I could cut in some stuff from other camera angles because, again, this was a sim racing channel, so it's video games, but maybe I can record the replay and cut in some other bits. And I took that attitude the whole way through, really, as, you know, what can I improve for the next video from the last one? And to some extent I still do that now. I produced over 300 videos for the sim racing channel. I'm only up to about 20 for Offbeat Builds because everything is lovingly crafted and takes a long time. But yeah, it's very disappointing when the advice to someone is, oh, you've just got to practice.
Yeah,
and you've got to get better.
It's good though, isn't it? Because it's like I talked a little bit ago about your kit bashing skills, which we'll delve into. Like anything good, it's boring as it is. Anything that you see of someone that's doing really, really well, or anything kind of good that happens in your life, like probably like your taxes and your savings, probably the same thing, or your skills in sim racing, all of the things that you might see that people are doing really well, they take a whole bunch of time, and it takes a whole bunch of time to build all that stuff up, right? You know, so you just gotta have the willingness to have that slow grow, the incremental gain, you know, building up the experience. For every one kind of success you see, there's probably 4 or 5 failures in the background that you've had to work on. But you enjoy that process, right? You enjoy the kind of the incremental gain?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you do anything, I was going to say creative, but I think it applies to a lot of other things as well. If there's something you're passionate about, you've got to have a mentality that, you know, it's going to be a journey, and you've got to find bits of the journey that you enjoy along the way, because some of it is going to be hard work. Some of it is going to go wrong. And, you know, it's, I guess, attitude and the application of learning from your mistakes that help dictate how that journey goes. You know, this is getting very much into sort of guru podcast territory, isn't it? Which is not my specialty. What I can say though is, you know, for every model that you see in a YouTube video, there are sort of about 3,000 or 4,000 that I built before that, where I drilled through my hand or cut off the end of my fingertip or glued my hand to the desk or spilt an entire brand new pot of Null oil over my trousers. So yeah, one of the things about social media is that it obviously doesn't encourage us to share our mistakes, and I try to within the videos as much as I can, but a lot of the mistakes happen off camera, so that's helpful for me.
Yeah. So let's delve into why 40k then, because that's where it all started. You mentioned you saw some Eldar warriors. So what is it about 40k that enthuses you and keeps you? Because it's a long time, right? You know, we're not talking about like a couple of weeks. What is it about 40k and that sci-fi world that kind of, you know, entrances you?
It's the grimdark thing. I went through phases of enjoying things like Star Trek, but the Star Trek stuff I might go back to now is maybe the slightly more gritty stuff. I never really enjoyed the shiny sci-fi thing, or particularly the really sort of hoity-toity end of high fantasy as well, where everything's all shiny and clean. There's something about the sort of, I guess, how horrible the Warhammer 40k universe is that appeals to me. One of my younger experiences watching a movie I shouldn't have watched, when I sort of snuck down at night and watched a cassette my parents had, was Aliens. I watched that as a maybe just teenager, and that left a big mark, I think, stylistically, and in terms of the sort of vibe of things I enjoy to this day. So, I guess it's probably quite a common answer, is the feel of the Warhammer 40k universe is what drives my interest in it and continues to.
It's like no one's having a particularly great time. Maybe Tyranids and Orcs are maybe having a good time, but that's pretty much it, right?
Well, Orcs can't not have a good time, and I think campaign-wise, Tyranids have been doing pretty well progressively over the years. They've got that one thing they're doing, and they're striving towards that goal.
Incremental
with abandon, really, aren't they?
So, are you just looking at codices and rule books? Are you reading all the fiction behind it? Like, how deep are you engaged in that world?
I used to be a lot more so. Well, there used to be a lot more of that kind of thing included in the codices and the various actual game-related books. I enjoy a Black Library novel as much as the next guy, but it's not a huge driver. Most of my inspiration, I would say, comes from outside of Warhammer 40k, which is probably a good thing, because I've got this Excel spreadsheet with probably about 400 or 500 build ideas in it, many of which are things that are just mentioned once in a thing that I was reading. And it turns out that's actually not really much of an idea. It's just a name that's appeared. And if you've got to conceive something kind of from scratch anyway, isn't it more fun if the jumping off point is you just watch this this amazing limited series on Netflix or something, and there was this really nice fun way that something happened, and maybe you could apply that to one of the factions in Warhammer 40k and do something interesting with it. So most of the inspiration these days is external. I do some stuff that is generated from in-universe. My big summer project last year was building an Overlord gunship, which is sort of the Primaris equivalent of the Thunderhawk. So it's a 24-inch long spaceship, essentially, which is a silly thing to build, but I did because I like doing that kind of thing. And, that was kind of fun, diving into the lore, the few limited snippets of it that there are, and trying to sort of come up with something that feels appropriate based on the lore as written, and something that would fit within the universe, and something that I could, should my senses leave me, take to a game and say, I'm proxying this as a Thunderhawk gunship.
It's interesting how it's kind of a double-edged sword, in the sense of that the company is very, very successful, and it continues to grow and release new things. But I wonder, does that close off potential avenues of interest, because there's more factions? And you mentioned before about that's great in many ways because there's more sprues and there's more bits and there's more opportunities. But also, if that story is filled out and you can kind of see behind the curtain a little bit more, do you ever get a feeling that you kind of, your space for the laboratory of experimentalism is it getting smaller, or do it just not affect you at all? Is it no indifferent to you?
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I certainly had that opinion for a little while, and not only just the factions being filled in, things like the Adeptus Mechanicus turning up, and various other bits that were always sort of fairly prevalent in the lore but never really got represented on the tabletop. There was also sort of a shift around that time towards what you might call monopose models.
Yes.
They're not really monopose in the old sense that, we used to use the term, that every high elf spearman looks exactly the same in that unit of 40 you've got there. Have fun painting them. But they are all designed to go together in one way. Whereas the previous sort of generation of models were much more modular. And that felt a little bit like a step in the wrong direction to start with, until I started kit bashing some of the modern kits. Because you can still glue them all together and then just chop them back up and do what you want to do with it. And that does make it a little bit harder. And I think to answer your original question about whether the opportunities seem a bit thinner on the grounds with all of the spaces in the lore filled in these days, the type of person I think it might impact is someone who's perhaps a bit more sort of casually into kit bashing. They just want to buy a couple of boxes and throw a couple of different bits together, do some head swaps, those kind of things. What is, I assume, pretty common for the average hobbyist. And I think that's a bit of a shame because it makes it tougher. The upside to it making it tougher is that the creations I see people coming out with now are far more interesting, more unique. I think it's pushing people that are really into kit bashing to do more interesting stuff because there's less low-hanging fruit there, I guess. And I don't mean that in a negative sense. I want to be really clear. I don't think head and weapon swaps are low-hanging fruit. They're cool and everyone should do them.
Yeah. What's the biggest thing that you could say to advocate for kit bashing? If you were on a 30-second advert, 2 a.m. in the morning, you've got a certain advert for, filing your taxes at the right time, another advert for, all that kind of stuff. If your advert for kit bashing, that you were advocating for kit bashing, what would be the key things that you'd look into say, you should kit bash because?
You should kit bash because you don't want your army to look like everyone else is on the tabletop. It's the same as painting your army in a unique way or taking your own stylistic approach to it. The models have become perhaps a little bit more homogenous since they've become monopose. So yeah, chop some bits off, glue some bits back on, make them your own.
Nice. That's really cool. So let's talk about your toolbox of actual tools, but your toolbox of experience. If you're looking to get into kit bashing, what are some kind of skills that you might need to look at developing, and what are some actual tools that you might need to potentially look up to get?
Okay, well, if we start with the actual tools, the number one most important thing is a good knife, a good hobby knife. Don't mess about with, a Stanley knife, the sort of thing that's designed for DIY or anything like that. I see that sort of thing all the time. They're just not sharp enough. They don't offer you enough control. I use surgical scalpels because they offer the sharpest blades. The blades are replaceable, and you should replace the blades way more often than you think. I buy them in a box of 100, and I think they're about 13 quid for 100 blades. So it's 13p a blade. I probably change my blades 2 or 3 times per miniature. Well, maybe it's not quite so much, but certainly, there will be a blade change during a miniature build, if not 2 or 3 if it's a more advanced one. Next up, just a nice little hobby razor saw. It doesn't have to be fancy, but if you're cutting 2 pieces in half, knives aren't great for that. Knives are great for scraping away detail, modifying things, etc. But if you want to cut something's arm off, you probably need a really fine saw. It needs to have really fine teeth, and the kerf of the blade, which is the width of the blade, needs to be really, really fine as well. The finer, the better, really. Obviously, that means you're removing less material as you cut through it, and you've got lots of control with those fine little teeth. And because all the miniatures are plastic these days, cutting through stuff is an absolute breeze. It's worth spending just a tiny bit more money on. You don't have to spend a lot. 15, 20 quid will get you a really good razor saw, and they are way better than the sorts of things that you get bundled in those sort of cheap start-out modeling kits that you find around. Beyond that, in terms of tools, it becomes a lot more related to the sorts of things you're doing. Files are useful. Different kinds of abrasives are useful. I think realistically, getting the cutting right makes everything easier. So the next thing I would say is adhesives. find stuff that works for you. Not everybody's the same. I like liquid cements. I'm a big advocate of Tamiya's extra thin cement. Lots of people use different other liquid cements that they really like as well. I've just found something that I've stuck to because I know it.
Stuck to, nice pun.
Yeah, right. Super glues I don't get too fancy with because it gets really expensive. I generally don't like the little tubes you get just because of the lack of control. It's nice to have a thin super glue. That's a nice little thing to have because you can sort of wick it into gaps, and it's got much more of that sort of you can play with the surface tension a little bit to get it to go where you want, but it goes everywhere if you get it wrong. Beyond that, yeah, I think
Green
just
stuff?
Stick with the basics. Green stuff, yeah, well, that's the thing, isn't it? Green stuff is its own separate thing. Sculpting is its separate thing, really. Green stuff and other two-part epoxy putties are really useful for gap filling. They certainly are, but there's quite a steep learning curve with it. And I think I try not to do too much green stuff work in my builds because, one, it's not my greatest area of expertise, and two, I think it always takes a build from being this is achievable by most of the audience, no matter their sort of skill level, if they just sort of apply themselves to it, to okay, this really does require quite a bit of sort of practice and patience. And I think any time I watch my wife decorate cakes and stuff like that, and she's really good at it, but very occasionally, something will happen because she's used a slightly different brand of icing or whatever on it, and the properties of it don't behave in exactly the right way, and it sort of all goes wrong. And it's sort of, I feel like that's the kind of thing with green stuff, is it's quite a tricky medium to work with. So until you've built up a bit of skill and familiarity with how it behaves at the various different stages of drying, because the properties really do change. It starts off really soft and really sticky, but then as it dries, it becomes less sticky, so less likely to actually stick to a model. But that makes it easier to work with, but it's also harder. And eventually it never really gets to a stage where it's hard enough to sand on its own. So it's a tricky material that you need to learn all the properties of, which is probably true of most materials, but I think green stuff's the tricky one.
Sprue goo or sprue goop?
Sprue goo, yeah, I use far too much of it. It's entirely replaced, not entirely replaced, but it's replaced a lot of what I would have traditionally filled with green stuff before I stumbled across this a few years ago on the internet. For those that don't know, I'm sure everyone listening to this, that listening to a painting podcast, knows what sprue goo is. And I don't explain it in the videos anymore. I just put a little box up on screen saying what it is, because it's becoming a bit repetitive having to explain it every time. But it's essentially styrene plastic dissolved in a thin liquid plastic cement. So that can be made from bits of old sprue or offcuts of styrene sheet. I use styrene sheet for mine because then it goes white and it shows up really nicely on the grey models. One of the concessions to being on YouTube.
Nice. Well, I'll give you a great opportunity to be like, no. But where I first started kit bashing was things like sawing the wrist off an arm, changing a sword from maybe a chain sword to a power sword, and putting together combi bolters. Because typically when you buy a box of Space Marines, it gives you like one combi weapon of each type, or maybe not even that. And so sometimes if you're outfitting certain squads, you can take multiple combi bolters, but you don't have the bits. So that was where I first started, and I didn't get much further past that, but that's where I first started kit bashing. So tell me why that might have been wrong, or was it right? Did I stumble upon the first steps that maybe are good ideas for kit bashing?
Well, I think it's right for two reasons. One, as Games Workshop have finally sort of come around to thinking all the bits you need should be in the box, and for the most of the sort of 25 years or whatever I've been doing the hobby, that hasn't been the case. So yeah, most of my kit bashing for a long time was replicating weapons that I couldn't easily get, or should have been included but weren't, or that I'd like to have included but they didn't think would be appropriate. So no, I think that's absolutely the perfect place to start. It teaches you how to be economical with your cuts, because you don't want to waste the part. You don't want to ruin it, do you? You've only got that one bit that you need to kit bashing's the other thing you need, and then you're really, really in trouble if you ruin that. So it teaches you all of the skills you need, really. And kit bashes are just a series of cuts and glue joints, really. So, that making a combi bolter out of a bit of melter gun that you found in a tank kit and a bolt gun, and trying to desperately sort of make them fit together, and all the things that I think most of us did when we were newer in the hobby, and that certainly was a necessity when I was starting out. I think they perfectly prepare you for doing the more advanced stuff. And as I said, the more advanced stuff is just doing that, but on more parts of the model.
You mentioned that your inspiration for builds comes from little bits of lore or little things that are mentioned, or maybe something outside of 40k. So have you got like an example? I know you've done a lot. You mentioned thousands of builds that you've done at this point, but do you have one that kind of just jumps out to you as like particularly poignant for some reason that you'd like to talk about, or is there just too many?
I mean, there are quite a lot. Just looking over at my shelf of models. So there are some that I particularly enjoy. I'm working on a project at the moment to build an Imperial Guard army, Astra Militarum army, based on a series of, well, not really a series, but based on a bunch of science fiction drawings from the 20s to the 40s that were featured in engineering magazines. So these were sort of fanciful ideas of what things might look like 10 or 20 years into the future. So you've got things like screw tanks, and you've got robots, and you've got monowheel motorcycles, and all sorts of crazy stuff like that, but in that sort of beautifully optimistic 1920s 1930s style, and everything's always bright red. And if there's ever an army man in it, he's sort of US Army fatigues from the time. So it all really sort of plays off each other really nicely in a way that fits really well into the 40k universe. So yeah, that's I'm calling my sort of retro future guard project. I particularly enjoy working on that.
Nice.
And that was, sorry, come.
And what about your inspiration for? You're getting your inspiration for the builds from different areas, but what about your inspiration for your craft? Because you also include different items that people wouldn't necessarily first jump to when it comes to kit bashing. You use a lot of like little bits of pipe or tube. You obviously pin things, use bits of paper clip. So where are those ideas for the kit bashing craft coming from? Is it other people on YouTube? Is it you have certain magazines like Kit Bashers Weekly? Like, where are you getting those ideas from?
That'd be nice. If anyone wants to start that with me, then let's do it. We'll get the pitch deck sorted this week. No, I have always tried to scratch build things out of necessity, really. When you're a kid starting in Warhammer 40k, even in the 90s, it was really expensive, and your pocket money only goes so far, and it might take you weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks to save up to buy a Rhino or something. So I got good at going down to the local model railway shop and buying styrene sheet, and then I realized you could buy these little tubes and little rods and all sorts of other shapes and stuff that can help you turn this two-dimensional sheet of plastic into a three-dimensional model, which over years of continuing to do that, partly out of necessity to start with, and then just out of a love for it, leads towards scratch building spaceships and stuff. If I'd have been born 30 years earlier or 40 years earlier, I would have been the sort of person that would have been just absolutely drawn to going and building, model prop ships for television and film and things like that. But alas, those jobs have all gone to computers now. So I'm stuck painting Warhammer models on the internet.
Do you still feel like your craft is evolving and developing, or would you say you're kind of a master of what tools to use and how to use them, a little bit like a kind of sushi chef, but for kit basher models?
Well, I appreciate the sentiment behind the question. It's very flattering, but no, things improve all the time, but they only improve in areas where I am conscious and attempting to improve. So for me, painting has always been a necessary evil. I've always enjoyed the building more than the painting side of things, which is why I don't generally feature the paint side of things in the videos. Some videos I do, but it's rare, mainly because I find it interminable to talk about painting. And I just have the utmost respect to anyone that can talk about putting on, two thin coats of Bastille Brown week in, week out. It's not a skill I possess. So I find my painting stalls quite a lot because I get to a point where I'm happy with the sort of style and results I'm getting, and that can be a bit of a crutch, and I'll work through that for a while. And then something else will come along that I really have to try at, and all of a sudden, by trying at it, I get a little bit better at it. Who'd have thought? And that is the same with the kit bashing skills, but it's difficult to find a story that I can really highlight something there, I'm afraid.
Is there the world of kit bashing, its tools and its ideas and its principles and practicing, is that evolving? Like different tools that come out periodically? Is there different materials that you find? Is there is it or very stagnant where everything remains largely the same?
Yeah, no, it's. I think it's always moving. Obviously, you've had disruption from the likes of sort of 3D printing that has an impact on that, and is a useful tool. Personally, I don't like printing entire models, I've tried some digital kit bashes, which the results were really good, but I found the process not very satisfying. It just doesn't scratch the right itch for me. But by keeping an eye on other disciplines, and this is something I do a lot, and I probably should have answered this for a number of other questions, really. By looking at other disciplines like the armored fighting vehicle modeling world, model railway world, some of the RC guys, they're always coming across new materials and tools and different things that perhaps you wouldn't have exposure to within the miniature creation hobby. And even within the miniature creation hobby, the cultural differences can help bring up some changes. For example, like you look at some of the tools the Gundam creators, the Gunpla guys, are using are very different. And I've just ordered a set of glass files just because I want to try them out. They're always being recommended to me by guys in the videos. And I want to see if that's the right thing. I've got about 10 different ways of abrading a small lump in a piece of plastic, but it's always interesting to see and try a new one.
Mm-hmm. That's super cool. And you mentioned a community there. So how big is the kit bashing community? Are you part of one? Do you host one? Is there a Discord? Is there ways that we can come and see your work that isn't just necessarily a YouTube video, and maybe ask you questions or ask the community questions about things?
Yeah, I have a Discord link to the channel. Which is links are in all the video descriptions. I don't think, in the same way, there's not necessarily a unified painting community. I don't believe there's really a unified kit bashing community. It's lots of people creating, crafting, doing their own thing in their own spaces, and I quite like that. Yeah. I do miss the old days of forums a lot, and I was reticent to start a Discord until fairly recently, because one of the nice things about internet forums is all of this information that gets discussed and stored and collectively curated stays there, at least until something like PhotoBucket disappears and then everyone's screwed. But with Discord, everything is behind closed doors, and I sort of railed against that for a while, but it is a wonderful place to have more dynamic conversations with people. And our community is quite small still, but it's really nice sort of chatting with people every day about what they're building and sort of workshopping ideas and helping people to come up with their own stuff, and that ends up being reflected back in my work. Often after I've just posted a video and a few people come up with some great ideas that I really should have included, but if we can work on the timing of it, that'll be even better. Yeah,
it seems to be we're a bit of a strange time with social media, where you mentioned forums there, and it was just everything was there, everything got kept, and it was like your friends or people that or people that were doing the things that posting. But then kind of social media then changed to it's not really actually your friends posting stuff. It's like they're trying to push you in a different direction, or maybe people are trying to monetize things or advertise things. So you're seeing less of your friends posting their stuff. And that's why I like Discord, I think, because it kind of goes back to the people that I care about posting stuff that they care about. Does that kind of make sense? And that's what I like about Discord, I think.
Yeah, no, and it is genuinely very good at curating that kind of space, probably because it is behind closed doors, and it's difficult to sort of social mediaify it in the same way. I mean, I have struggled with Instagram, with the Offbeat Builds thing, because it doesn't really promote pictures in the same way it promotes videos, because it wants to be a TikTok alternative. And I don't need another platform for putting out videos. I already don't have enough time to do the videos I make for YouTube, really. So I don't want another rod for my back. And it's a shame, because at one point it was a really nice place to put sort of curated galleries of what you'd been working on, and it sort of lost that, and everything evolves, and now I'm a grumpy old man complaining about the good old days, so I'm going to stop myself right there.
Just to bookend that, I think I watched something recently, and it was called The N-shitification of Social Media, and there's like someone that's actually studied it, and it's about the process that social media platforms go through, where at first, when it first opens, they want lots of people on there, and it's just you and your friends or people that you connect with doing stuff, and then it changes. But anyway, let's move into a positive pathway. So how does your bits box, how long does it take to create this? Where are you getting bits from? Are you literally just buying up all the kind of GW boxes as they come out? How are you building up this library of opportunities for your builds?
Messily. No, I have sort of kept and maintained bits boxes for the entire time I've been playing. It was a bits box to start with. It was just the spare bits. And then it became sort of maybe an Imperial and a other bits box. And then it's become, multiple bits boxes for factions. And as I've started doing stuff for the channel, I've been focusing the ideas for the builds are a bit more focused, rather than just let's see what I can build today. It's it's trying to create something that I think the audience will enjoy, rather than just purely for my own entertainment. So with those kinds of things, sometimes I am just buying a box because I want to base these on. I'll tell you what, the next video, the one I'm currently working on, is a bunch of different Terminator characters. So I've gone out and I've bought the new Deathwing Knights box specifically for that, because while I've got a load of other Terminator bits which will end up being used, and lots of stuff from diverse other sources, I want the core of it to be the sort of nice robed kind of Deathwing Knight things. So there's more and more of that's coming in as YouTube has sort of become, I guess, more of the center of the kind of things I create, which means I'm creating more diverse things, which means I'm getting more diverse bits, which is kind of nice.
Solely GW stuff, or do you look at other companies that potentially offer bits, like Cybor, for example, is a small company that offers different alternatives, or is it just GW you use?
Yeah, when it comes to I quite often use aftermarket heads. My Retro Future Guard are all aftermarket parts there. I've used some 3D printed bits that I bought the STLs for, and I've 3D printed my own bits as well in the Retro Future Guard project, just because there was no way of getting any parts even remotely like it, and scratch building it looked like a complete nightmare. So I'm quite brand agnostic in every part of my life, but there is an element, I guess, that I find quite satisfying about taking something that Games Workshop made and subverting it, or using it for a purpose that it wasn't intended for. So I guess most of it is from Lord Workshop's Emporium. Nice.
Talk about your bit box. You mentioned about how you started off one size with just bits, and then you've got different ones. So talk to us about how organized is this? Have you got specific little cubbies for specific items? Everything they're just thrown in? How do you organize all of those parts? Because there's many. Anyone that's hobbied and had extra bits, you don't want to throw them away. You want to hoard them. I might need that in 7 years' time. So how are you organized in this? And how big is the area that you're storing all this stuff in?
Well, yeah, I like to sort of curate my bits sort of by faction, although faction might be as broad as Imperial, Chaos, etc., rather than getting too granular with it, and by size. So like for my Space Marine stuff, I've got a box of very fine bits. I've got a separate box for weapons, and I've got a separate box for larger parts. I used to have those, those really little organizer drawer things where you can buy lots of them and end up with 100 different drawers. And back when I was building an orc army, a fairly sizable orc army, which I have built a few bits for on the channel. I had everything labeled out. It's like, okay, choppers in this one, and heads in this one, and blah blah blah. But it becomes such an upkeep task to do that, and I mentioned ADHD earlier in the podcast. It's not just organization is something that when I apply myself to, I'm excellent at, but I do have to sit and actually bring myself to do it. It's not something that naturally pleases me. So, chaos is the answer, I think.
Organized chaos. You know where everything is, or do you?
I do. I can tell you, to give you an idea, when I was running the sim racing channel, I had a studio space, sort of an industrial unit that I rented to produce the videos in, because obviously, sim racing rigs are quite big, and I had a few of them and stuff. It was impossible to do at home. How I organized that was beautiful, because everything was out. So all of my light stands were on the wall where I could see them. Nothing went into drawers. Everything had a shelf to be on. It was neat, but I could see everything, which means I knew where everything was, and it was glorious. This Warhammer business, with all the tiny bits that need to be stored away everywhere and the thousands of different tools, and that's a nightmare. I have like 20 drawers in this room, and I have no idea what's in any of them, even though they're labeled.
It's like a kind of a scrapyard, but for little individual plastic pieces. That's pretty cool. So if someone's listening along and have been enthused, maybe they've not done kit bashing for a long time, or maybe they've done little bits like I mentioned about changing a weapon or making a different weapon. Is there places that you would recommend to kind of start? Is there certain kits that you would recommend that are maybe a slightly easier to kit bash than others? Because the things that you show are amazing and in the complexity, and it's interesting just watching them. But do you recommend like a starting point or an easier place?
Yeah, I think I'm going to be a bit controversial and say I think the best kind of crafting you can do is the one you want to do. So rather than maybe necessarily try to find a specific kit that you can practice your skills on, just find something that you actually like the idea of. If you want some Terminators that are surfing on the back of a Rhino or whatever, then go out and do it. Try it. What's the worst that can happen?
That's really good. Do stuff that you love, do stuff that you want to do because the motivation is there. A lot like if there's like competitions for, the Golden Demon, and things like that for painting. Is there kind of like a place where kit bashers can come to acknowledge and appreciate each other's work, in a competition form, or not even a competition form, but maybe like a salute or UK Games exposure, like these kit bashers meet to physically see what other people have done?
Nottingham Hospital Accident and Emergency, I think is where most of them end up. I think there are a few competitions run by various Instagram accounts for bashing, for kit bashing various things. I think kit bashing is part of it, isn't it? A part of miniature creation, and painting is the bit that follows afterwards. And if you look at most Golden Demon entries, they're all beautifully kit bashed as well. So it's kind of strange for me, sort of conceptually, to separate them out like that. Okay. So maybe there should be. Maybe we should be doing hackathons, but with miniatures. Probably near an A&E though.
Yeah, well, it's as you mentioned, because you mentioned that painting is something that you kind of suffered through, or something that you kind of, just get on with. So it would be a shame to see so much creativity and things that's not duly recognized. Not even like, to pin a medal on your chest or anything like that. It's not that. But like you mentioned the Golden Demon things, or the things that is also kick bashed, but people maybe aren't appreciating that than maybe more appreciate the paint side of things, they might not necessarily even see the kit bash. So to put so much effort and so much art and so much craft into the kit bash, but maybe not have those skills to get the paint into the high level, kind of makes me a bit sad that we're not recognizing the kit bashness of certain models.
I mean, part of that I think is particularly with Golden Demon, it's the commercial nature of it. Obviously it's designed to sell miniatures, but maybe they should include a hey, that was a really awesome conversion you did there, but could you try painting it better award I can give out to various miniatures.
If only you'd painted it better. That's cool.
at least you tried. Yeah.
And would you want to do that? Because you mentioned a few times about how, you kind of do it for you and you're quite happy in your own little nook. If those things were more freely available, would that be something that you'd want to get into, or are you just quite happy in your own space?
Yeah, that's not for me at all.
Yeah.
I used to, again, during the sim racing days, I used to get dragged into all sorts of esport competitions and stuff like that. And I have no appetite for competing against other human beings. I would much rather occupy my own space where I can be creative, I can produce videos about it, I can be fairly irreverent in the way I speak about it without having too much scrutiny, and everyone just has sort of good vibes with it, rather than the feeling that you have to be better than the other guy.
Well, I think that depends on the level of competition, and it depends on the people, doesn't it? It's like I remember going, I don't know how I bumped into this. I think I was on I was seeing my brother in Norwich. I think my brother used to live in Norwich, so I went to Norwich and I bumped into like a scale modelling. It wasn't necessarily even a competition. I think it was just a scale modelling situation in like a shopping centre where people had just put some tables out and they were showing the scale models. And I remember just standing there looking at this tank for ages, and the guy who painted it stood behind, and I was like, this is amazing, this is really great, I really like how you've done this, and I see how you've done that and that. And he was saying like, this is the model and these are the things that I'd added, and I just appreciated the care that he'd taken to replicate certain effects in scale, but also the things that he'd added. Like he actually, I think he said that he'd sculpted a little rocking chair that he put on the back of this Russian tank, and then there was like a kind of crate that had some cognac or some brandy in, I think, and it was just really good, just appreciating the care. And so I wonder if you look at other people's kit bash models, or maybe people look at your kit bash models, and you can just because only you know how much effort it takes to do that, right? And that level of appreciation, I think, is probably more what the competitions are in some ways.
Yeah. Well, of course, there are other ways to do it. Something I'd love to see is if gaming conventions, and particularly miniature wargaming conventions, just offered a bit more space for people to display their stuff. It's something you do get in the sort of, as you say, in the scale modeling community. There are more sort of exhibitions that are about showing off your work, which is kind of nice, mixed in with the there are 300 traders here all trying to sell you stuff, which is really useful, because mail ordering stuff from those people can be tricky. It's some guy in a shed making little bits or whatever, and they do a post office run once every 2 weeks. Picking stuff up at a show is great. And that's one of the things I really like about wargaming shows. But it'd be nice if there was just a way for sort of clubs or even individual creators to go and like the armies on parade thing. I think if you take away the competition aspect of that, it's a great way of displaying the hobby in the kind of like you were talking about. Sure, it's not in a shopping centre, but we could change that.
I just imagine you looking at a kit bash model and like, that sword is from this kit, and the guy would be like, yep, and this is piece number 24 off sprue 8, and I'm like, yep. I reckon that's a really interesting thing to do, to kind of to see those pieces that someone's put on and knowing how they've been derived, right?
I don't have the memory for that.
No?
I think Pete the Wargamer seems to be really good at knowing exactly where bits come from and those kind of things. I think my brain works in entirely the opposite way. I'm more of a just sort of throw everything out on the bed or on the floor, get all the sprues out, have a look through the pictures. That looks like a good part. Where can I find that? Rather than he plans his builds, and I would love to say that I plan my builds, but no, not even a little.
But that's the beauty and the richness of it, isn't it? Is that we all approach it in different ways with different approaches and all that kind of stuff. But as we kind of begin to wrap up, our hour has flown by. Unfortunately, it always shocks me how fast these conversations go. But as we kind of wrap things up, what about the future with the channel? Do you have like set ideas and set visions about where it's going to go, or is the channel a lot like your builds, your scratch builds? You kind of just see what happens when you throw all the bits on the floor.
There was a plan to start with, which was see if this is viable. Then I got past. I was very lucky, and it's a story I'd like to tell because I don't think anybody knows this. The first video I created for the channel, I documented building an Orc Mega Gargant, which was the largest Orc vehicle in 40k, sort of equivalent to the Imperator Titan, but for Orcs. It was an old epic vehicle, sort of largely forgotten by the lore since, but I've always wanted one since I was a kid. So I decided to build a 40k sized one as my first video. And this thing took about 4 months to build, almost full time. I poured everything into it. I edited this sort of 30-minute long video, which I thought was a pretty tight edit for that kind of thing, threw everything I knew about video production into it, and it got 17 views.
Right.
Which was which was quite crushing at the time. But I picked myself up and thought, what could be wrong with this? Well, one, YouTube doesn't necessarily know what I'm doing with this channel yet. It's only had one video to test the waters. That's the thing I've picked up about the algorithm. Maybe that's the case. Maybe the audience doesn't really know what a Mega Gargant is because it's not really been talked about a lot in the last decade or two. Okay, maybe that's the problem. Maybe people aren't as interested in orcs. All right, let's kitbash a Space Marine thing, see how that goes.
Right, okay.
I know, low-hanging fruit, I know. But the second video got 100,000 views. It got me past the YouTube monetization thing in about 2 days. Not that that's a thing that particularly drives me at all, but it's a sign that, hey, this is going to work. If a big US corporation is willing to give you a share of the dough, then there's something there.
Sure.
That was my logic. And so there was a plan at the beginning to see if I could sort of build the channel and keep producing videos that had that kind of impact. And sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Largely, if they're Space Marine, they do. If they're not Space Marine, not quite so much. But that's the nature of the beast, unfortunately. Going forward, more of the same. I don't have any grandiose plans really beyond. It would be nice to be able to build it to a size where I can get a dedicated workspace, because at the moment I have lots of fancy tools that I can't have out, and I like to have everything out, as we've discussed. I've got a laser cutter. I want my laser cutter back out, but it's stuck in a cupboard under the stairs at the moment. I need to get myself to at least big shed level, and we'll work from there. I have small dreams. Small dreams.
That's super cool, man. Well, thanks a lot for coming on to the show, Chris. We really appreciate it. And
thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, like I said at the start of the show, we might watch a video and be entertained for 20 minutes, 25 minutes, but all those skills have taken a long time to build up, and there's a lot of failures that's led to a lot of successes, and your videos are really tight, they're really concise, they're really rich, and the kind of the approach that you take is really endearing, and it's really positive, and it's funny at times as well. It's definitely not just a dry kit bashing video, it's a little TV show in itself. So thank you for the time and the effort and the failures that you've gone through to bring the huge successes. It's appreciated by a lot of people, mate. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me on your podcast and letting me be narcissistic for the last hour.
It's okay. I'll massage you a little bit longer. But it's been brilliant to talk to you. Thanks a lot for your time, mate, and hopefully we'll speak to you again soon.
Thank you so much.
episode 256 all wrapped up there. Thanks once again for Chris coming onto the show. Anyone that comes on the show gives up a valuable hour of their consciousness to chat to me, so it's always great to hear from anyone, but a special thank you to Chris this week for being the guy. He's the guy that stepped up during this week, so thank you, Chris, for coming onto the show. If you kit bash stuff, let us know. I'm always interested to hear about and see different kit bashes, so if you are a big kit basher, let us know. That'd be really good to see. I'd really like to know where your bits came from, she said, and I'd really like to know the story of the build and all that kind of stuff. It's pretty cool. I don't really have a bits box anymore because I've not really been doing GW stuff for a heck of a long time, and I don't really have that huge big bit box, but which is a bit sad. It's always good to have a big bit box, like a whole bunch of possibilities and options for different things. And I used to have a fishing tackle box, I think it was, with all these different little compartments with hands and right hands and left hands and legs and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's always good to have a bit box. So if you are a big kit basher, I'd love to talk to you. I'd love to see what you're up to, all that kind of stuff. But anyway, what have I been doing hobby-wise? This week I took a little break from my rose nights. I've been painting those for a while. My wife quite likes to do basing, so I kind of handed off the trays and the units to her, so she can kind of do her magic with the mud effects and different things like that. So I created a little bit of time for myself, so I finished off my Iron Makers, the first unit of my House Greyjoy faction. So I painted a lot of them before I went away on a summer holiday, so I finished those out, which are quite good. I took them to a little bit of a higher level than I do usually, because previously I've been painting like big multiple units, like 2 or 3 units at a time, so I was only painting 12 of these guys, so I was able to spend the same sort of time but go a little bit higher, and that was really nice. It was a really nice feeling, actually. But I was really struggling taking pictures. I took a whole bunch of pictures. I just wasn't really happy with the pictures. I just didn't really think that the pictures were very good, that enabled you to be able to see the work that I'd done effectively. So I've been tinkering around with the camera quite a lot, but it gets to the point with the camera where it's like I'll spend a certain amount of time with it, and then it's like I'm done. I don't enjoy fiddling with settings on the camera too much. I don't enjoy posing the minis and all that kind of stuff too much, but yeah, that was good. That was really nice to do that. And I started my second unit of Greyjoys, which is a drowned men, which is a first for me, because usually you got one guy on an individual base, but the drowned men for the House Greyjoys got like 3 guys on one bigger base. So there's like a gaggle of drowned men. What would you call a group of drowned men? A gaggle, I guess. Maybe. I don't know. Anyway, yes, there's 9 guys in total, but they're on 3 bases. So that's been an interesting new challenge. So the guys are a little bit weedier, because it's literally just a fella and a bit of driftwood. That's their weapon, a bit of driftwood. But they're all kind of standing next to each other as well, so it's quite hard to get in there in certain areas with your paintbrush. So they're coming along quite nice. I'll probably step back to the Rose Nights over the weekend to try and round those off. And yeah, that's what I've been up to hobby-wise. Oh, it's always interesting to know what you've been up to hobby-wise, so make sure you swing by the Facebook group or the Discord or anything else to interact with us. It's always great to see what you guys are doing and what each other are doing, because it kind of really adds wood to the fire, especially if it's completely different to what you're doing. I really like seeing things that are just radically different from the things that I'm painting, because you go a bit kind of stir crazy. I do anyway, because I've been painting A Song of Ice and Fire for so long now, which is great. I love it. I love fantasy. I love Song of Ice and Fire minis. I love the game, as you know. But it's really good to just see like sci-fi stuff, and it's really good to see post-apocalyptic stuff, because you just get that variety through other people's eyes, which is always really, really good. I'm getting back into the swing of winding up the podcast guests now, so I kind of try and work like 8 to 12 weeks in advance, and then during the summer I took a little bit of a back seat with recording, so I kind of only really recorded an episode every 2 weeks, and so the kind of bank of episodes that I have kind of slowly went down, but as I've kind of got back home and I've got back onto the regular time schedule, I've started to kind of whir the wheels back up. So I'll talk to you a little bit about who's coming out on hopefully he's coming on over the next few weeks. These are people that are booked in. So I'm going to speak to Mr. Jordan Heckman this weekend. He was a Paint All the Minis group member when it was a original Facebook group, Jordan Heckman. Hackman. He was actually on the show very, very, very early. But he's actually created his own zombie apocalyptic rules set, and he's also, rules writing. I think he does it full time now. So I'm speaking to him this weekend. So that'd be really good to talk to him about that. He was actually on the 250th episode a while back. He talked about that. I'm going to speak to Mr. Matthew McLean again back end of next week. That'll be interesting. It's always good talking to Matthew. Derek is coming on, Mr. Coontier. Derek is coming on next week also to talk about why he loves Unmatched. I mentioned it before. The Why I Love podcasts are probably the ones that I enjoy most. Not that I don't enjoy the other ones, but the Why I Love ones are really good just because it's just a dude talking about why he loves or why they love a certain game. So Derek's going to come on and he's going to talk about Unmatched. And Unmatched is a great game. If you've not ever bumped into Unmatched, it's got minis, but they're not like the world's best minis, but it's got minis. It's just a great little battle game. It's like, superhero movie fight, but it's not just superheroes from one universe. It's just got a whole bunch of characters from past literature to movies to fables and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, Unmatched, if you've not checked out Unmatched, you can check out that. That's really, really good. I'm going to talk to Smitty, who I mentioned about his beard battered onion rings previously. He's going to come on because he is an author. So Mr. Schmidt is an author. So he's going to talk about his love of the hobby, but he's also going to talk about his experience about being an author, a published author. That's pretty good, that, isn't it? Being a published author, that's one of those kind of life things that it's quite good to be able to be like, I'm a published author. That's pretty cool. So he's going to come and talk about that. John Dawson is going to come back on again. He was on a previous episode recently, but he's going to come back on again and he's going to talk about why he loves Wild West Exodus and also Gangs of Rome. And then after that, Mr. Stephen Baker is on the show. So Stephen Baker is the creator of Hero Quest, Space Crusade, Battle Masters, to say that the least, that there's just 3 games that you probably know that he created. So Stephen came on a few weeks ago. And so that's already recorded. I've already recorded one for him. That's going to be out next week, but I've also got booked in the second episode. So what we did with Stephen is that because he's done so much stuff and because he's just such an interesting guy, like his frame of reference is like deep, it's deep, he goes deep. We couldn't fit. I'm not quite sure that was, sorry. I'm not quite sure we knew what we were getting into when we had that first episode. So I made the first episode like about 10 minutes in. It was apparent that we just couldn't fit all the stuff in that we would want to fit in an hour. So hopefully this is the first of a trilogy next week. So the first episode with Stephen is we just talk about all the stuff that happened up to Hero Quest. So his experience of the hobby, his experience with the gaming industry up to Hero Quest. And then we're going to talk to him in a couple of weeks and we'll talk about just Hero Quest pretty much, I think. And then we'll do a final one where we talk about subsequent games and different things. But that's really interesting. That's really amazing. He's a crazy interesting guy who's got so much experience. So that's really, really good. Also got booked in Alex from Storm of Steel YouTube channel. I've also got a whole bunch of other people that I booked up. I think that's enough. I think you got enough. There's a few little breadcrumbs there you can kind of follow along. But if you've got ideas for guests or you yourself want to be a guest, please give me a shout. I've got literally hundreds of people that are on the ideas list. I bored you a few episodes ago with kind of like how I structure things, but I'm looking at it now. I've got literally hundreds of people that are on the not messaged but interested in talking to. So I can add to that list for sure. And equally, if you recommend certain people that are already on that list, I'll bump that up the list. And again, I mentioned this a while ago as well, is that ladies, I really want to talk to some more ladies that are involved in the hobby. I'm not sure if it's my cologne, but again, just getting ladies in the bag, getting them in the bag to kind of come on to the show is I find it quite difficult, and I need to learn how to be better, I guess, because I kind of either there's no response or there is a response and it just doesn't really work out. And yeah, I don't know. I just think that conversion rate of approaching people and converting that into having a decent hobby conversation is sadly lacking on the female part. So if you can help me out with that, if there's something that I'm doing this, not attracting the ladies to the show, then please let me know, because they're amazing, you know, in the same way that, you know, anyone that does a hobby is amazing, and I just don't feel like I'm getting that kind of full balanced overview of everyone that's involved in the hobby. So if there's something that I'm doing that I need to improve, then please let me know, because I'd like to do it. There's just a few, like Trish Carden is awesome, Louise Sugden, who's also awesome, you got Annie from Bad Squiddo, and there's a whole bunch of other ladies that are involved in the hobby that I'd love to kind of talk to. So Lila Mev is another one from YouTube. There's so many amazing ladies that are in the hobby, and I'd love to talk to them. But anyway, that is enough of the post ramble, I think. Make sure you check in with your group, make sure you say hey, make sure you keep yourself on an even keel, but also be that hand that guides other people, and make sure that everyone is okay and they're all right. I'm a bit sick, you might have heard it in the pre-ramble, and also this one. I'm a bit tired and a bit sick this week, but that's natural. I'm in my 3rd week back at work after having a long time off, so a little bit of a sore throat, a little bit of a headache, a little bit of kind of just like bleh. And I've got a big first aid course this weekend as well, so instead of having 2 relaxing days, I've just got 1. But that's all part of life's rich tapestry, isn't it? So anyway, that's enough of the post-ramble. Until next time we're together, keep failing to get the female guests.